Are at the hour to start. Before we begin, we're going to welcome everyone with prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. It is our prayer that the true business of our meetings and works will be our spiritual transformation and the transformation of others through us and through our ministries. We ask this of you as we now begin in the name of God, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
We are so glad that you are here and are grateful for the time that you're offering this morning, or it looks like we've got folks who are in the UK this afternoon to be with us. My name is Julie Simonton. I am your Diocesan Minister for Congregational Development and Stewardship, and just delighted to see so many folks coming here to help us launch our annual giving webinars. Stephanie?
Yes, we are also delighted to welcome Terry Goolsby. Terry is Senior Vice President from Horizons Stewardship. We are grateful for his time. We're going to let him tell you a little bit more about his ministry in just a moment. But for now, I want to offer a few notes on our time together. We are especially glad that Terry is with us today because this webinar will pivot us from the best practices conversations we've had so far in May towards our fall annual giving webinars coming up in June. The schedule for these, by the way, is available on our continuing diocesan e-blasts that land in your inbox. It's available on our website and on our Facebook page. If you don't receive our diocesan emails, please sign up for them, and that link will be posted in the chat. If you've not visited our website lately, and if you want to make sure you are receiving our Facebook feed, that will also be in the chat. And lastly, if you'd like to catch up on any of our previous webinars, that link will also be put in the chat because that is available on our Diocesan YouTube channel. We are going to hear from Terry in just a few minutes, but I want to offer a few notes here before he begins. It is really helpful for us to know who you are. So if you have not already, we invite you to include your first and last name on your Zoom identification. It also lets us know which church you're at. That would be great too. You could put that in the chat. That'd be very helpful. It's exciting to see folks from around the Diocese of Virginia, our friends in Delaware as well, and across the Anglican Communion. Thank you for joining us today. Your questions are also very welcome. The ministry work that you are offering at your church is very important for all of us to hear. So as we work through this webinar, please use either the chat function or the Q&A format to send us your questions or comments. Julie and I will be watching these as Terry continues with his talk, so don't worry about interrupting the flow. Please go ahead and write in your questions. And with that, we welcome Terry Goolsby. Terry.
Hey, Stephanie, thanks. It's good to be with all of you. This is a delight. I truly respect the work that Julie and Stephanie are doing with you guys, and so I wasn't quite expecting as many people from the UK, so I'm a little bit honored. And I also know that my interesting speech pattern to their ears will sound like, what the world is going on with this poor man? And if you're wondering, that is a chimpanzee behind my shoulder with looking like Chiquita Banana. And I won't even go into the details, but if you're looking and thinking, dear God, what is that? It's what you think it is. So let me give you just a little bit of information about Horizons and who this company is that I work for and what we do. So it was founded by Cliff Christopher, and for some of you, you may know that name. Number one, he was in Virginia in 2013 at your annual council and spoke on the theme of stewardship and generosity. He wrote, still to this day, the best-selling book on stewardship called Not Your Parents' Offering Plate. It is one of the most succinct pieces of information on stewardship that I think that you can use in the local parish. So if you don't have it, it's a shameless plug for you to go out and find that book. I don't make any money off of it, and Cliff actually doesn't either. So at this point in time, I do recommend that book. And Horizons for years has been known kind of as the capital campaign company, helping churches raise funds. But about 4 years ago, we realized that where the greatest need was in the area of annual stewardship and increasing generosity in our local parishes and with our own parishioners. So we started developing plans and delving deeper into that area. And I'm going to show you in a second a resource that will provide lots of materials that you might be able to access or use. Stephanie and Julie may have promoted this already, but if they haven't, I'll show it to you and share that with you. And to give you a little bit of background about myself, I started in this business of generosity and stewardship for churches in 2003, having been a director of music for about 20 years in local churches. I have a love for Virginia in that I was a director of music from 1990 to 2000 at First Baptist Church, Richmond, Virginia. And my dear, dear friend, Robert Dilday, and I took the Canterbury Trail almost together at the same time. I became an Episcopalian in about 2005. Robert took the road a little bit longer and became a priest, and many of you in Virginia will know that name. He sang in my choirs. He was a very, very dear friend, and miss him dearly. So let's kind of delve into some things today, and I'm going to try to share my screen, and we'll see what happens here. And let me just ask Julie and Stephanie, did that pop up? We're good to go. Okay. So let's be honest, nobody's got the answers here today. We're leading where we've never been before in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis, but there are some fundamentals that I think will serve us well for the future, and whatever that future may look like or be. In my own opinion, we will not be returning to the normal. There will be a new normal, and we don't know quite what that's going to look like. So let's kind of walk through this for a second. And here is the site that is a repository of tons of information in regards to stewardship and generosity. It's called Giving 365. You can get to it from our website, horizons.net/giving365, or I'm pretty sure at this point in time you can get on to Giving 365 by just simply typing in giving365.com. I can't promise you that, but we were trying to get that all set up. And it has COVID-related sections. It has annual stewardship suggestions and ideas, even down to thank you notes, the way to thank a parishioner for a gift or donation. So I really encourage you to go there. I encourage you not to go there necessarily just now, because I think it can only withstand about 15 to 20 people at one time accessing those resources. You do have to sign up. You do have to give your email address. Nothing's for free, but we don't sell the address and we don't do anything with it except it's basically to allow you to access that information. So I think it's a great resource today, so please feel free to sign up for that. We'd love to have you as a part. So here are 5 key steps I think that we're going to be moving toward, and that is faith-based fundraising is choosing abundance and opportunity, mobilizing for ministry, communicating with your ministry and financial leaders, promoting recurring giving, and all of these we're going to talk about in more detail. And finally, using online offering talks. It is, I'll save it for later. I was going to make a comment about some basic information that Henry Nouwen, the great theologian, shares, but I'll share it in a moment. So it's a time to choose abundance or scarcity. And in the midst of all of this COVID-19, it would be very easy to jump into the scarcity part of things. People are listening. So what are they listening to? That we're stating we are monitoring the situation. We are scaling back. We are shutting down this, or the church has been closed. And really the opposite of that is the church is open and we are worshiping together. A small parish in the Washington, D.C. area is worshiping purely by Zoom. So they're not streaming their services, but they have a small enough parish that they can congregate via Zoom on Sunday mornings, and they're loving it. Another thing would be if you have parishioners who can help in some way, click here to sign up to deliver groceries to vulnerable people in our community, or we are mobilizing volunteers, or we are launching online. So my parish in Dallas, which is where I live now, is Church of the Incarnation. And we've been very adamant about showing that the church is moving. All of our growth groups or weekly or monthly Bible study things are taking place via Zoom. We are providing communion, basically a drive-through communion that people can pick up the host and then take home. So we've really been trying to promote the fact that we are still functioning and moving forward as a church. So what do? Talking about generosity when the pews are empty, or we hope by the time we're in the fall that the pews will be filled, if not filled, with some kind of basic standard of 20% capacity or whatever that might be. So staying financially strong in these times require us to be intentional, invitational, inspirational, and informational. So being intentional is this. Make giving a part of your online worship service. So as an example, at my church, the offering comes after the announcements. I call it halftime in the service. But when the offering begins, we are talking about this as an act of worship. It's hard right now, but it can be done. Avoid any perception of pressure, desperation, or manipulation. I saw a video that a parish created, that the first video that they sent out about generosity and stewardship and giving to the church was based off of desperation. We must, if we must give, if we are to maintain our ministries, we'll have to start dropping staff members and such. And that may be the case, but basing this on desperation or people feeling like they have been manipulated is not the best thing. A cliff basically says people don't give to a sinking ship. And that could be the sign of desperation there. Make it worshipful and sacred, not perfunctory or transactional. And there's a balance there between trying to help people understand the transactional part of this, but also making this tie into worship and what is sacred. Express gratitude to your parishioners for their faithful giving. Thank you notes are a great way. I have one priest who sends out 5 thank you notes a week to his parishioners for their generosity and giving. Allow time to make a gift during the service, during some music or a video of some sort, and always include a call to action, a desired outcome of what you would like to see as a result of this. So being invitational is this, that the offering is an invitation to live as God's people created, to be loving and generous. It is an invitation to participate and support life-changing, transformative ministry. It's not begging, not heavy-handed, and it's not manipulation. This is where I wanted to stop and quote Henry Nouwen. His little book on the spirituality of fundraising is just a wonderful resource. And he says this, fundraising is first and foremost a form of ministry. It is a way of announcing our vision and inviting other people into our mission. We are inviting you to invest yourself through the resources that God has given you, your energy, your prayers, and your money in this work to which God has called us. Once I read that, and it was from Henry Nouwen, I just felt a lot better about what I was doing and what I was asking my churches to do. And so ultimately we want to, ultimately we want you to be bold. We believe in this ministry, we believe in the Episcopal Church, and I'm just shooting all over the place, so forgive me for this. And I will go back and find where I was. So the point is here, don't be apologetic, make the ask. And I think sometimes we fall into that category of being fearful of making the ask. And maybe it's my Baptist background. but that's never bothered me much. But I know from many of the parishes where I work that many of our priests are not emboldened, but fearful of making that ask. But if you believe in the mission and the vision of your church, you need to be making that ask. Other people will be doing it, other organizations. So back in the days of old, when I was at First Baptist Richmond, we did something in the service called the dedication of gifts. And it was like an offertory talk, but it came at the end of the offering after we sang the doxology and the communion plates were brought down to the altar. And someone would stand up and in 40 seconds, either clergy or parishioner would stand up and say, on this day, I dedicate your gifts to the glory of God and in grateful thanks to the 30 children we had in vacation Bible school last week. 5 of those children came from what would be considered impoverished homes. And those 5 children went home with backpacks filled with school supplies. And your giving made that possible for Vacation Bible School, for those backpacks, for those school supplies. Thanks be to God. Now that came at the end of the offertory, and the church now has changed that to come early in the service before the offertory offering is actually taken. But the point is here, we're going even deeper now and saying, share a story of a single life that has been changed. So we could reference Timmy, who came from an impoverished home, among 4 others, and that the relevance to today's circumstances is he went home with a backpack. You can use video and a lot of pictures if you're streaming online at this point in your services, and include stories of lives that were changed because they served. So you'll have some people who may have gone on let's say a mission trip to Nicaragua. And I've never met anyone who's gone on a mission trip who will say that their lives were changed more than probably the people that they worked with, or at least they felt that way. So share those large impact stories. Offering talks are also serve as teaching moments about biblical generosity. You connect the listener to their call as a Christ follower. So the biggest compliment I got when I was at First Baptist in Richmond, Virginia, was a parishioner who came up as we were nearing our annual stewardship focus. And she said to me, you know, we don't really need a sermon on stewardship. We get that every single week with our dedication of gifts, is the way she referenced it at the time. And that was the biggest compliment I could ever hear, because we were connecting giving to some act of where members' dollars were actually going to. Being informational is this: remind your parishioners of your church's giving options. And I hope you have more than one, which is just simply sending in checks. Online giving, show the URL for the website donation page. Text to give, share that number. Share a video of someone using recurring electronic giving. And you see, that's underlined because I'm going to really push for recurring electronic giving here shortly. An auto bank draft, or offer a how-to video link or a resource. Mailing checks, offer to send self-addressed postage paid envelopes to those. Believe it or not, today we are seeing some churches with an influx of mailing checks, which boggles my mind, because I would just think in my own life, I'm not anxious to write checks, nor am I anxious to go to the post office and buy stamps. Have the appropriate information on the screen as you are talking, and explain how they can participate during the offering moment. If you're on Facebook, you can use the chat box, the heart, and the smileys, and those types of things. For your audio-only audience, read the website name and or church mailing address, plus your text to give number. And I'm going to stop here and say, if you are offering electronic giving and you haven't actually gone on to make a gift, you should, just to see how easy it is or how difficult it is to make an online gift. I'm working with several churches right now, helping them to develop a generosity plan in their churches for year-round participation. And one of the things that I'm doing is making donations through their website, just so I can see the ease of what it involves in making a donation. Consider an email or a video email on Fridays reminding members about worship and encouraging them to prepare for the offering. Download worship guides, links to online giving, all of those kinds of things you can do. Here are the popular forms of electronic giving, and this is going to carry us into the fall and beyond, friends. If we can move toward electronic giving, the better off we are. ACH is called the Automatic Clearinghouse. It's basically a bank draft. It's so I don't have to write a check. I just work with my bank to set up a gift. Credit and debit cards, and some of you may say to me, I hate that idea because they charge 3% and the church makes less money. And I'm going to give you a reference to my son, who is now 35, who is in international banking, and his parish asked him to speak as a millennial in regards to stewardship and generosity. And when he met with the committee of about 8, he said to them, the first thing you never ask a millennial is, would you speak for other millennials? But then he went on to say, I'm the vice president in this bank and I don't own checks. And if you want me to give, I need to do it through credit or debit. And I'll be as honest to say, I'm doing it for the airline points, to be honest with you. But if you'll let me know and allow me, I'll just increase my pledge by 3%. So I'm encouraging churches on their website to say something like, would you like to offset the 3% cost of your donation that the church incurs by allowing us to increase your donation by 3%, or would you increase your donation by 3%? You see how that works. Bill pay is when the bank sends your check, church and check, and kiosk. Now this is going to make many of us as Anglicans or Episcopalians gag. But I'm going to share a story with you from Fourth Presbyterian in Chicago, Illinois, where I worked some years ago. And who would want to be the Fourth Presbyterian Church, to be honest with you? But nevertheless, that's the name of the church. And they're a fabulous, wonderful church known for their traditional worship, fabulous choir, and Aeolian Skinner organ. And this church had a kiosk in their narthex. Now, because it was a Gothic church, they didn't just set a computer screen out, but they built a kind of a Gothic looking desk with the kiosk, but it allowed their church members to walk in, scan or slide their credit card or their chip into the machine basically, and make their donation. So that also would be considered electronic giving. I want to push you toward recurring or e-giving. So in recurring giving, a donor chooses an amount and payment frequency for gifts that are automatically sent to your church. Monthly is the most common frequency, but weekly, twice a month, and quarterly are also options. Here's the point. If a gift does not automatically come to the church without any repetitive action from the donor, then it is not recurring. So my gift to my parish is set up as a recurring gift. I don't have to think about it. And maybe that's bad, but that's the way I'm paying all of my bills today. And it's just the direction I would encourage all of you to move as you're moving into the fall. This is going to be too small a screen for me to really share, but it's a pricing plan to show you how you can grow your giving. And so there's a zero cost, there's $50 a month, etc. And I can provide this slide to Stephanie and Julie so that they can send that on out to you. But once I put this together, I thought, my gosh, you guys probably can't see it. And I tried to increase my screen size and it just doesn't work well. But I'm going to move on to the ease of use. Is the most important piece for your donors. How easy and fast is it to use your system? Does the donor have options? Options would be like, can I give to the operating budget? Can I give to a designated account? Just how many options do I have? And I'm not a big, huge fan of designated accounts, but many of us have those and we've had them for decades and they're not going to go away as much as we might like them to. Does the process feel seamless or like they've been sent somewhere else? So some of these online providers can provide you a very basic process, but you have the option of also using the same color scheme, the same font that you use for your parish, and then what are the default suggested settings. So I've recommended it to one of my parishes. Let recurring giving be the default setting, not a one-time gift. Let the donor choose. So you're basically implying, why don't you choose recurring giving and set that up? It's just a recommendation. So I often hear people say, my congregation is just not computer savvy. Yes, they are. They're talking to their grandchildren each week. And by the way, they're probably on Zoom now because this is the world that we find ourselves living in. So in 2015, 67% of Americans were already paying their recurring monthly bills with electronic payments. ACH sign-up cards are easy. Create a video to demonstrate signing up. And by the way, there's a lot of grace right now, and we're finding that really splashy looking professionally made videos are not received as well as somebody using their iPhone to demonstrate signing up online. So you don't have to feel like it has to be professionally done. I've often heard, we like the way the offering is right now. Well, it was and may never be again. As churches are moving back into their sanctuaries and their churches, most are not passing the offering plate. That's human touch multiplied many times. And so that's not coming back for a while. And when we were doing it at my parish, I hated not putting money in the offering plate when it was passed. And at that time, we came up with little pewback cards that said, I gave electronically. We also basically then flipped the card over and added another iteration to it and said, this is how you can give electronically through the church or through a recurring gift. So reasons donors use recurring gifts is it's the ease and it's the convenience. The gifts are present even when they aren't. If you have in the United States, if you have the summer slump or whenever that is, you may have it in the UK and as well, I think we all do. Recurring giving allows those gifts to be present when we're not. And it allows us to keep from falling behind in our giving. And people give and they use recurring gifts, frankly, because they were asked to do them, to set those up. Financial benefit of recurring giving, I'm only going to give you, I've got about 2 or 3 pages of this, but I'm only going to give you a few. E-givers gave 15% more than traditional givers. Vanco 2017, Vanco is one of the companies that provides electronic giving. E-givers give 33% more than traditional givers. That came from PushPay in 2018, and PushPay is another provider. Nonprofit recurring donors give 42%, and this comes from the Network for Good Giving data. They are institutionally based company primarily, but they do a lot of good work, and if you're not part of the nonprofit organization Network for Good, you probably should be. Recurring donors give 5.4 times more over their lifetime. Classy State Philanthropy 2019. And here's some more information. E-givers are more attuned to, and give toward Bible study than traditional Sunday school, et cetera, et cetera. They just tend to give more. Getting started, if you don't have e-giving, go to your local bank and sign up for ACH or bank draft. This can be done electronically now. You do not have to walk into your bank. But you can ask for those forms. Mail everybody a letter explaining that you will soon have ACH bank draft, but enclose 2 self-addressed stamped envelopes until you are able to mail them a sign-up card. And begin following the plan outlined in the Horizons Recurring Giving Development Plan for COVID-19 social distancing. Gang, that's why I want you to sign up for the Giving 365, and you'll find it our recurring giving development plan in Giving 365. I want you to have that resource. Again, I've stated it here, recurring giving development plan for COVID-19 from giving365.com. How do you do this? So recruit a giving promotion team, develop a recurring giving fact sheet, review and follow the tips for optimizing your church's website. That's you're going to find in Giving 365 as well. Ask your pastor, finance team, church leadership to sign up first. The priest or chairperson shoot a 2 to 3 minute video to be sent to regular attenders and members explaining the benefits and the importance. Send a letter with an FAQ, a sign-up card, and return stamped envelope. We've talked about that. Create your pewback card. If we are ever back in our churches, and we will need a pewback card, this is the document that I was talking about that we had laminated document. It was just a small little card that fit in the pewback that explained e-giving, recurring giving, and we could drop that in the offering plate when it was passed to say, I gave online. A lot of these I've already mentioned, but here's the deal. Often in our parishes, we think if we tell our parishioners one time that they should get it, but sources now tell us that our actively involved parishioners attend church. I'm trying to remember the last information I received, but it's like either slightly less or slightly more than 2 times per month, and they consider themselves actively involved. So it's going to take something like a 5-week plan of online worship engagement, follow-ups, and thank yous for this to work, not a one-time announcement. Staying connected to your leadership, both financial and ministry. This is going to be important now and into the fall as you're moving into your annual stewardship focus. So who are your ministries leaders? They are anyone who currently provides leadership to any team or ministry group in your church. They are small groups, Sunday school leaders, ministry team leaders, or committee chairs. They are vestry, deacons, elders, council, session, board. They are untitled leaders, respected voices who may not be in an active leadership role. If you're over the age of 40 in the United States, you will remember a commercial that was for a company called E.F. Hutton. And they were really a financial organizations, but the commercial said, when E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. They were the respected voices in your parish. You're looking for your E.F. Huttons. And if you're younger than probably 40, you have no earthly idea what I'm talking about. So hopefully I've got a market big enough for that. So who are your financial leaders? They are typically the families that give 10%, or they're 10% of your families. They give between 35 to 50% of the total annual giving. Often, not always, they are in a better position to weather the difficult times. And I'll stop and tell you an anecdotal story of a parish in Washington, D.C., where I was working with them in a year-round generosity plan and a focus. And one of their members on the call said, you know, I've been locked down in D.C., and frankly, I have more money right now than I've had in a long time. I haven't had to pay dry cleaning. I haven't had to pay for house cleaning. I haven't. And so he went through the whole list of things that he was not having to pay for it, and money savings basically. And luckily for him, he had not had a salary decrease. And he said, you know, I can step up now and I can give more for those who cannot. And that was a great witness, if you will, to his willingness and understanding of generosity and stewardship during this difficult time. Donors, for some parishes, this might work as donors who give over $10,000 annually. I'm always worried about just giving a flat number, and I've said it in here. This description will not always fit small churches. It will not always fit larger churches. So an alternative description are the donors who account for 40% of your annual giving. Those are your financial leaders. Why is it important to stay engaged with them? Because they typically represent 20% who give and do 80%, the old 80-20 rule. They will often step up when others cannot or won't, and they have the most influence in the church, and if invited and connected, they will use it to support the leadership of the church. They are full of wisdom and creative ideas. This crisis is a tremendous opportunity to get them more deeply engaged with you and the ministries of your church. So here are some strategies. Make a direct contact, like a phone call, email, video, hand-signed letter, whatever that might be, with this group ASAP, and continue that process of connecting with them, perhaps even more than you're doing with your regular parishioners. Being in the know and feeling connected to your church leaders is very important to this group. In addition to any other church-wide, parish-wide communications, create a weekly touch for this group that includes the following: new information or developments, something inspirational about the ministry of the church and what's going on, and an invitation to get involved. Some additional strategies for staying connected are leaning into these with known leadership skill sets for wisdom and perspective. They will appreciate being asked. These are your business leaders in your church, your community leaders in your church, and your medical leaders in your church. So this leads me to a video that we put together of one of our vestry members at Incarnation, who is the president of a hospital here in Dallas. And he did a most beautiful job of connecting physical health with spiritual health, and how the church and the hospitals are connected in some way of providing those most needed elements today. And your top 20 donor strategy, connection strategies. Reach out to your top 20 givers with a phone call asking, how are you doing? And I'll just flip through some of these. You can see, can I pray for you? How can the church be there for you? Thank you for your generosity. And so I'll leave it at that. Hopefully I've given you enough time, but I really ran through that rather quickly. So I can provide these slides to Julie and to Stephanie if you'd like to have those as resources. And friends, I can't stress strongly enough the thank yous. On Giving 365, we have even examples of how to say thank you. And it doesn't start with dear donor. You know, it doesn't say you helped us survive a huge crisis, but it does start talking about specifically your love for your parish and how they've made a generous gift. And so use those thank yous as a resource. Use all of, frankly, Giving 365 as a resource for you. And I was asked recently, why are you guys doing this? You're giving away a lot of property. And the idea is that we want the church to thrive. And we know at some point in time, we'll return to a day as we were able to in 2008 and 2009 when things got better. And we'll return to a day when we'll be able to hopefully work with a lot of different churches. But for right now, we want our churches to thrive and to have some wonderful resources. So I turn this back over to Julie and Stephanie in hopes that that was helpful for you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right now, Stephanie and I are going to add a little bit, but what would be great right now is we've got some time for those of you who have questions for Terry. Please begin to put these into the Zoom chat. Some of you have asked along the way if these slides will be available. Yes, they will be available. We will make sure that they are posted both to our Facebook, our Facebook link, and also, excuse me, also on our website. We've also loved the chat going on the side about different books that are available. Some that Terry has suggested, we got the links up there. Some that were suggested as the chat was going on. These links will also be available on our resources page on our website, and we'll make sure that it goes up on Facebook as well. So Stephanie, are you seeing any questions before I begin to mention a few things?
I'm not seeing any additional questions. I'm gonna check the chat, the Q&A. Not seeing any additional in the Q&A, but I was scrolling through the chat again. I think we got everything as we were coming through. Here's a question about ACH. More specifically, if you could talk about some details about ACH and I guess how that works.
and as well about the kiosks.
And kiosks.
As also, I'll offer this as well. As Terry talks through his details, make sure that everyone here knows our webinar series will continue through June. And the first webinar that we're offering for the annual giving webinars will cover digital giving. So you can join us again next Saturday for one that's specifically on digital giving. As well, all of these webinars are recorded and will be available through our Facebook page and on the Diocesan YouTube channel. But Terry, if you'll have some conversations about what you've seen with ACH and with kiosks.
Yes, so ACH again stands for Automated Clearinghouse, and it's now even going by a different term. But it's designed where we're moving again away from the age of when I was in seminary. By the way, I worked in a bank, and my job at the end of the day was to balance the bank, which my wife thinks is incredibly scary because I can't balance our own checking account. But what we did there was, at the end of the day, we were running all of these thousands of checks through a machine that read those checks. And then we would send those hard copy checks to the banks, and then they would be distributed out to those other banks. So ACH then became the electronic version of that. So we're not writing those checks anymore, and all banks have moved to ACH. So what it requires from the donor is their routing number of their bank, which is the far left series of numbers at the bottom of your check, and your account number, your specific account number, which would be the middle set of numbers in your check. And then on the right would be, at the bottom, would be simply the check number. This is number 325 in my checkbook, if you will. And so you reach out to your bank as a church and you ask them for the ACH information that you would need to begin that process. And they will send that to you, and you'll fill out that form and apply for it. And to my knowledge, there is not a cost for this. And if there is, it'll be minimal. And then they provide you the information, and you can develop and create a card for your members to fill out their information, and they will determine how much it is that they want to set up to give. And it's basically recurring, and how often they want those dollars extracted from their account and sent to the church, basically. So it's going away from paper, frankly. And I don't think there's really any downfall. You do, if you want to stop the process, you have to do that yourself by contacting your bank. But instead of sitting down and writing checks, it allows you as the donor to simply set this up with your bank so that it becomes an automatic payment from your account. And it's pretty easy and seamless. And I'm not going to get into all the details of it. But we've got some information on Giving 365, and it'll walk you through that whole process. And most, I wouldn't say most, I'm thinking I'm privy to just basic information at my parish, not details of who gives what and how much. But we have a large percentage at Incarnation who are giving via ACH. And if they're not doing that, they're giving with their credit card. And again, I want to stress that I fought that. I didn't like the idea of credit cards, but by golly, if I get a payment every month, the church gets a payment every month, I'll gladly give up the 3% for the summer Sundays that we're not receiving giving from parishioners because they're gone. And in the kiosk, Venco or PayPal, one of those, provide this kiosk system, and you frankly just use an iPad. And you can go and punch in your information, and one of them provides even a slide so you can slide your credit card through. I should have included a demographic slide that I used at the Consortium of Endowed Episcopal Parishes in Louisville this year that talked about the different age groups and how they give and what they think of giving as toward the church. And so our builder generation, who is passing away, didn't need to be told anything. They had been taught by their parents that they gave to the church, and that was primary, and that was first. And then you get to the boomer generation, and they then began to say, talk to my heart and talk to my mind, both. And then as we start moving down to younger generations, it became trust is the next important piece. And then one of the youngest generations says, tell me how you're changing lives, and I'll tell you whether or not I'm going to give. And the most blatant thing my son said to his committee, besides the fact that I want a credit card, I'm going to give my credit card, was he said, tell me how you're changing lives, and I'll give you what you want. I'll be generous. I'll promote my church. And this was the hardest thing for us to hear, was he said, and by the way, I don't need a country club with a cross. And I said, you were trained better than that. Your parents taught you better than to say something. He said, well, Dad, we can fall into that category so easily that we start looking at what we're giving as membership dues. And I don't want us ever to feel like these are membership dues. I want us to know, how are we making the world a better place? And as a 35-year-old, he says, and I think there is no denomination better suited for that than the Episcopal Church today. So see, we all converted. It was a good thing. And so the kiosk process is tied into your electronic giving, one of your companies like Banco or PayPal. And this can be set up on, I've seen it set up like on a desk in a foyer or a narthex of the church, and you can simply access that there as you're going into church. And this one church had 2 locations, one in a narthex and then one in a foyer that was a primary entrance besides the church doors. So that information, again, is on Giving 365, but I've seen that used and used efficiently. We are not doing that, by the way, at Incarnation right now, but we are moving in that direction.
Great, thank you. And I'll also, we do have a number of churches that have used ACH. For some, it works very well. For some, it has been a bit of a challenge. Another thing that y'all can suggest to parishioners is to set up an automatic bill pay, which actually is what I do. I just go to my bank website, I put in the address of where I want it to go through to, I put in the memo that it's my pledge, and it just goes automatically every month, without me needing to go in and write a check. And I'll also tell you, I pulled out some checks a while ago I owed a friend some money, and I pulled out the check, and she asked me if I Venmo'd. At that point, I did not Venmo yet. I do now. But I pulled out my checks, and she said, oh, how vintage. So, yeah, checks are quite a thing. I'll also add, if some of you are concerned, I know there sometimes are conversations about accepting credit cards at churches and how that might contribute to credit card debt within your church. This is an opportunity to have a conversation about that, to ask people to consider whether they give by credit card or debit. A lot of folks do want to give by credit card so that they get the points. I know I have several friends in the church and some clergy who always give by credit card because they get the points, and then they use those points for Subway sandwich cards and other things like that that they can collect and then use at their food bank. So if you're in a place to pay off your credit card, not accumulate credit card debt, it is a really valuable thing with that give back, that you can give that also to the church. We see here there is a question here about having missed several normal fundraising opportunities that you have throughout the year to raise funds, and how you can go about a special fundraiser without encroaching on annual giving. Terry, do you have any advice about those who have missed specific fundraisings that they normally have throughout the year, whether they're consignment sales or other summer opportunities, barbecues and things like that, and what they do to help balance it out or host it online, or about the competition. I know quite often there's a concern that if you're running something at the same time as an annual giving, you cannibalize your pledges. Any thoughts on that to offer folks?
That's the exact term I use, is cannibalize your regular offering. I think those specific fundraisers, the first thing you say is that these are gifts over and above your regular giving, and that they are specific to typically a ministry area or an area of need. And so my suggestion is, can you do some type of a fundraiser event for these that you've not been able to do? Can you do those via Zoom? And you know, I'm thinking of St. Matthew's Parish in Pacific Palisades, California, and they have a huge consignment clothes closet, if you will. And it's not really a consignment. I guess it's just a clothes closet for those who have the need. And we were doing their annual stewardship focus at the time, and they were trying to include that as just part of the way that people give to the church. And it implied that that could be in lieu of giving to the church. And I said, that's not the direction we want to go, in that we want to say, you know, or you can give to the clothes closet. So it's a balancing act. But yes, there have been parishes that have lost those opportunities for their specific fundraisers, especially if it was a cookout or a meal or something that they did typically. But I would just generate that in some lieu, in some time of a process where maybe you gather them together on Zoom. And if it was a fundraiser that involved food, everybody fix their own spaghetti plate and then make the appeal or the ask, if you will, for that. So it's what we're missing today, is that common touch and being together. And if we can tie those together via Zoom. Mm-hmm. And friends, we're not going to be going away from Zoom, even when we get back to whatever the new normal is. And we're saying at our parish, we're not going to be going away from streaming our services when we're able to go back into our churches full time and in full capacity, whatever that might be. So I don't know if that helps very much at all, but I think the key is always to say, remember that these gifts or donations are above and beyond your regular giving. That just is the foundation, I think, that you have to do. And then be creative and find ways to highlight and promote and remind people of what that special offering went to or goes to and where that need is, without going into crisis mode. If we don't get this, this is going to happen, but allow people to be generous and faithful in that process.
Thank you. And with our upcoming webinars in June, we'll address that specifically. But for some churches, the special fundraising giving is so specific to a time of year and a specific way that you fundraise. Stephanie and I are also very happy to talk with you through your specific ministry situation. So if you don't hear it covered, or you're wanting to have the conversation sooner, go ahead and get in touch with us about that. A quick word about some of our upcoming webinars. On June 6th, these are also all listed on our Facebook page and on our website. Our first webinar after this one is June 6th, that's Saturday morning, and it's on digital giving. That will be followed by our annual giving webinar. If some of you have been to our Church Vitality Day before to gather your annual giving resources, this is our Church Vitality webinar on annual giving. So you'll see all of the resources that are available to you, either through the one that we have written through our diocesan office, which is called One Together and is based on our baptism liturgy, and also others that are available to you through different websites. So we'll go through those and go through the details and what the annual giving calendar is going to look like for the upcoming fall. It will look very different than it has before, and how we can be agile and ready to be flexible with whatever situations we face in the fall. We also will have webinars on narrative budgets and on visual budgets. So check out our schedule that is on the Facebook page or on our website. Stephanie, is there anything that you would add to that?
No, just to say we look forward to bringing this conversation over to the Facebook page as always. As you have comments or questions, let's continue to engage over there.
And we also see a request for sharing some of the demographic giving slides. We will get those up as well and available through our different platforms. Also see a question about a kiosk and does that make sense during COVID-19? When we can't meet in person, a kiosk is probably something that you want to look into so that if it is right for your church, you are ready to launch it as your new opportunity when everyone comes back. I know that some churches, the Cathedral, St. Philip's in Atlanta, uses a kiosk not only for their giving opportunities, but for Mother's Morning Out and for youth trips. So whether it is a stationary kiosk like many churches have and we've discussed here, or whether you have someone minding the kiosk, which means you might have a square and be able to run credit cards through a mobile device, all of those are an option, and we will cover those when we have our digital giving webinar on the 6th. Let's see. Do you see anything else?
I don't see any additional questions right now.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. I see something in Q&A.
Yes, do you want to read that one?
Yeah, purely from a stewardship perspective, do you feel that COVID-19 might actually be positive for the church in the long term as a motivator for changing our practices? And will this outweigh the short-term issues?
Wow, that's a good question. I think what COVID-19 did is speed up the entire process of what was coming. That we had to move beyond the regular offering plate and we had to move beyond membership dues, if you will. So I think this has just sped the whole process along. I think when we are able to return to our churches, there will be such a desire for fellowship and to be together that if we are laying down these foundational pieces that I've kind of gone through today about connecting ministry and giving, making an ask, using the offertory as a time to either do the dedication of gifts idea at the end of the offertory or at the beginning. I think churches are going to take a bit of a hit, and if you haven't already seen it, you probably will in the short term. I'm hearing that some churches are down 10 or 20% in their regular giving. Interestingly enough, what I'm finding is that the churches who are implementing these offertory talks and connecting ministry and giving and are being bold about making the ask without being in crisis or sensing crisis, that they are actually doing well and their giving is frankly up. So I think in the short term, yeah, we're going to be affected by it. But I think all that COVID has done, besides everything else that's horrible, is that it has sped us into using Zoom meetings. And friends, I'm not sure if vestry meetings will ever go back to the church. I have a priest who said, I love doing a vestry meeting with a laptop on my lap, with my house shoes on and my pajama bottoms, right? And so my growth group, my group that we gather together every 2 weeks, we've been meeting via Zoom. And the chances are we're going to be alternating that between an on-site personal meeting when things get back to normal to Zoom. And we have people in that group who travel and they'll be joining us by Zoom, which they've never been able to do before. So I think we've just moved forward very quickly to a place where we were going to go, but it was going to take a lot of time to get there. And this has forced us forward.
Thank you. Stephanie, do you see any last questions?
Oh, I don't. I think we are.
I love the chat comment that said, yeah, and I can sip and drink wine while I'm having my meeting. And I will tell you that my growth group, we see a lot of that, and we don't mind it at all. That's one of the reasons I became an Episcopalian, is I could sip my wine without guilt. So.
We cannot, Terry, we cannot thank you enough for being with us this morning and kicking off our webinar series. We are grateful. Thank you.
My pleasure. I want to say to all of those who are on this that you have two phenomenal folks who are remarkable resources and are doing some of the best work that I've seen in our diocese, in the places that I work. So kudos to Julie, kudos to Stephanie. Be grateful for what you've got.
Thank you. It is our joy. We have a great time doing it. And we look forward to hearing back from folks who have questions, and we look forward to seeing you at our upcoming webinars. If you have folks with whom you would like to share this information, know that we're going to get this recording up on our YouTube channel shortly. Stephanie.
Yeah. I'm going to close us in prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Eternal God of love, in you we live and move and have our being. Breathe through us again this day. Give us the courage to be open and welcoming to your Spirit, that we may be led to do your will and follow in your ways today and tomorrow and always. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everybody. We will see you on Saturday, June 6th for our next webinar. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Terry.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.